for people who haven't been in a cult, it's a really hard thing to grasp, in their minds, that it's like, how can people fall for this? How can people think that, how could they ever think that a Korean man and woman are God, right? But it's a lot easier than you think, actually. I mean, because, as someone who is in it, and as someone who recruited, it's a lot easier to convince someone that a Korean woman is God than you really think it is.
Religious cults right in our own backyard. They may preach volunteerism, but investigations, including one by the Today Show, charge that the World Mission Society Church of God frightens people into joining with predictions of doomsday and presses for big donations of money. One woman said the church in Ridgewood, New Jersey, made her stay there all the time, discouraging her from using the internet. She got out. Her husband didn't.
The pastor made it very clear that if I continued to speak online, my relationship with my husband at the time would not continue.
When you read all the documentations, the court filings of all the court cases from the World Mission Society Church of God, they go and try and silence their critics, especially Michelle Cologne.
I think that when I continued to speak out about them after that, they made it very clear that I chose to do that, and that that was going to be my punishment, was that they were going to turn him against me and ultimately, convince him that I was possessed by the devil and that I was trying to take him away from his salvation and that he could no longer be with me. And he believes it.
Joining us with more now is cult expert Rick Ross. Sir, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Let's start with the very basics. You hear this word thrown around a lot. What is a cult?
Well, I think there is a core or nucleus for a definition of a destructive cult, which is number one, and the single most salient feature is a charismatic leader who is worshiped by the group, who becomes an object of worship and has no meaningful accountability. Number two, that the group has a process of coercive persuasion that engenders dependency upon that leader to make value judgments and breaks down their ability to critically and independently think. And it basically gives the group undue influence over their life. And then finally, that the leader and the group use that authority, that influence to exploit and do harm or abuse members.
We got in the van and we were driving to Flushing. While we're in the van, Daniel Lee decides to announce this trip to Korea that's coming up. And we're all like, oh, wow, amazing. Like everybody, that's like the most coveted thing in the church because you're going to go meet Mother. So we're like, oh my gosh, wow, amazing. And he's like, yeah, but you're not going, Corey. And I was like, okay, I didn't expect anything. And he's like, don't you want to know why? And I was like, sure, Pastor. Why? And he's like, because you're too fat. Just like that. Everybody just looked down. Nobody looked at me. And he was like, yeah, look at you. Imagine you in all the pictures next to Heavenly Mother. Everybody will look at you and not her. You'll de-glorify God with the way you look. And he just started ripping into me about the way I looked. And so I just sat there like just praying. I just want to go home. At that point, I'm like, I just want to go home.
There's so many different levels that I was affected by my time in the World Mission Society. Is one, it took away many years I had with my family. I really couldn't spend free time with them.
At that point, we were desperate, and we went on and we started contacting several of the top psychologists in the world on cults. Every one of them said the same thing: do whatever it takes to get her away from that group as fast as possible. This is a dangerous and especially challenging group to deal with.
I had been going to these studies for like 3 months, and yet I trusted them more than I trusted my mom. And that just shows how deep the psychological manipulation and the spiritual abuse is within this group. They are using tactics, they know what they're doing.
High control groups, they try to progressively get people to suppress their authentic identity, which you can call your actual self, who you really are. And they try to shift people's focus from who they want to be, which is their potential self, who they want to be in the future, to who the group expects them to be, which you can call in psychology, that's called the ought self, who the group expects you to be, which is your ought self. And they try to suppress your old identity, who you really are, And this is a constant thing that they do.
I became robotic at the same time because when you're so indoctrinated, you become that. It's not even you anymore, you know? It's like my personality versus the things that they've instilled in my head are like constantly fighting with each other. You know, like I want my personality to come out, but at the same time, I'm so like indoctrinated that I don't even know who I am.
So my wife had a more difficult time. She tried to talk to me, and then she said, "Hey, talking to me." She was like, "You sound robotic." She told me that. She's like, "You sound robotic."
Your wife told you that, yeah.
Yeah, wow. I'm like, that hurt me. Oh, it's really programmed. That's why my wife's getting mad at me. Like, you just saying things because you're programmed to say that.
It's not just manipulation. It's very deep brainwashing. We weren't allowed to feel emotion. We weren't allowed to have our own thoughts. And later when I learned that is a cult tactic used for brainwashing, to strip you of yourself, gosh, you feel so lost.
I've spoken to many former members who said to me, like, if mother told me to kill myself just to buy a gun and shoot myself in the head, I would have done it without asking questions. So that is the dangerous part.
The members, they don't realize these things because they're just following, they're just obeying, and they're too scared to question anything. And you know, this is not just exclusive to the Church of God. This is Jehovah's Witness, Mormons, Hebrew Israelism, so many different cults out there. Right. And they basically teach you, you know, that they put so much fear in you to question anything about the church.
Honestly, I gave up a lot, and I had a lot going for me and a lot of my goals, and I was very ambitious, and all my energy, all my time was taken from the church, you know, leading to believe that the end of the world was coming, this love bombing, these kind of mind control tactics being used.
Those are years I'm never going to get back. That's a lot of time that I should have spent with family that a lot of them not even here anymore. They robbed me of those like last days, you know, they robbed me of those memories and those sort of things that are really important in life.
They deliberately break people down, disorient them, spoon feed them incrementally what the teachings are, shape their behavior, control sleep, control diet, start to isolate people from family and friends who may be questioning, install phobias in people's minds to make them afraid that if they question the group or even have a negative thought, terrible things are going to happen to them.
The constant fear, the stress, what it did to my body. I couldn't live my life. They took a decade, and you know, they just filled me with constant fear.
Was it communicated to you that your tithing was connected to your salvation? Like, in other words, I mean, I guess to put it bluntly, if you didn't tithe, you would go to hell.
Yeah, you're on the right path. If you stop tithing, that's a huge red flag. That means you're spiritually sick. We need to isolate ourselves from you because something's not right, and you don't want to catch the ick. I remember hearing about how important tithing was for your salvation and your blessings in heaven. And if you don't, then all right, good luck. We'll see.
I do believe that they are utilizing people's belief system, which is something that's so central to people's sense of being, and they're utilizing it for their own personal gain and their own personal mission. Yeah, I think that they're taking one of people's just most vulnerable parts of their belief system and that they're abusing it.
Some people, including myself, you know, develop, you know, mental illnesses like PTSD, extreme anxiety, depression, and a lot of other things.
I can't even express like how broken I was like, honestly, I should have been hospitalized. I was so catatonic on the day of the Passover. I was vomiting. It was like a psychological crisis that I can't really express.
You know, that's not something from God. This is not God's organization. This is something dark and abusive and really needs the real light shown onto it.
A lot of people leave this group to become bitter atheists and agnostics.
Yep.
And you can see why, because they just crack and break under the law that you're not supposed to be under. You're supposed to have, you know, peace and rest. But this group is just grinding you to a little nub.
You don't feel peace. You don't feel peace. You just feel almost like shame, like nothing you ever do is good enough. They took away the gospel. They twisted it, they added to it.
One of the primary issues with the World Mission Society Church of God's version of the gospel is that the whole thing is founded upon doing things in exchange for forgiveness of sins. It's you do your part, you keep Passover, you tithe, and in exchange for that, you basically get a paycheck. So the version of the gospel that the World Mission Society Church of God preaches really is so far removed from this idea that you're seeing here in Romans, that salvation, justification is something that's supposed to be a gift.
Matthew 11, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest, and we give you rest for your souls. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now, gospel workers, is your burden light? You joined this group for a reason. You were looking for something to meet your spiritual needs, and you didn't just join for no reason. When you joined this group, you were seeking to know God. Well, there is a real God, and his burden is light.
You know, for a channel like Great Light Studios to exist, this is really impactful because when I left the church, there were just a handful of videos from former members on YouTube about the WMS. And when Great Light Studios came on, was around the same time that I had left. When I had left, like I left because of how the church treated me. But what helped me solidify my decision in leaving was listening to Great Light Studios and kind of having like an on-air deconstruction with you, Jordan.
Seems to all connect to me.
Yeah, makes sense.
This is like amazing.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I mean, this is literally like 2.5 years for me, like just like kind of like a dream come true, trying to understand what that means. You know, breaking down the doctrine and understanding from a biblical perspective why the doctrine didn't make sense. That was really impactful.
Then I went down this rabbit hole of everything because I was like, what else are they lying about? So I watched every video that Jordan made, and I was just, then my entire life changed.
It was very lonely, very full of fear, very uncomfortable walking away. You know, watching your channel was a big comfort. I spent hours listening to it, and it just made me feel much more comfortable with my decision. It gave me the kind of the strength not to run back to them.
Thank you guys for creating a safe space. You're really helping a lot of people. And I would not be where I'm at right now without the Great Light Studios platform. All your videos have helped me so much. So I really felt, pay it forward.
Continue to do what you're doing because you may not see it, but it's people like me. You know, it's a slow process, but you know, it's working. You know, it's people like you that make us just think outside of the box, really.
This channel has helped hundreds of people get their lives back from groups like the World Mission Society Church of God.
I wanted to just personally, even now that I have the chance, personally thank you, like deeply, for putting this content out there, because we're not allowed to conduct our own research. And you, even as you were not a member of this church, and you still put out this content is just a very commendable thing. You and people like Michelle Colon and Anthony for coming on and speaking out. People who speak out, it makes a huge difference. It helped me so much.